You want to make every game interesting? Step one, open the BetMGM Sportsbook. Step two, put some skin in the game. And step three, showtime.
Hey, you love football?
With the Fox Bet Sportsbook app, you can take it to the next level.
Okay.
Boom! This is next level!
Hey, Jesse from DraftKings telling you there's 100 million reasons to listen up. DraftKings is celebrating the return of sports by dishing out up to 100 million across everyone's accounts, including a guaranteed 1 million cash to a lucky person. Just download the DraftKings app and enter our free Survivor pool to grab.
For those who consume any form of entertainment, whether it's traditional television, social media, or any other medium, you've probably come across one of these sports betting advertisements. Sports gambling has been on the rise in the last few years. In the last year alone, approximately 46% of Americans placed a wager of some kind on sports, with an over $1.7 billion increase in money placed on sports bets. This is a staggering number, and many experts believe that sports gambling addictions could be one of America's biggest problems in the coming years. So are we in the beginning of what could be the next nationwide addiction? That answer remains to be seen. But for now, let's dive into the current state of America's new favorite pastime. So what is sports gambling? Sports gambling is placing a wager, commonly referred to as a bet, on the outcome of a particular sports event. Modern sports gambling comes in a variety of forms, with the most common being money lines, point spreads, parlays, proposition bets, and in-game betting. While this may sound like gibberish to many, these are all essentially ways of predicting the outcomes of collegiate and professional games. All of these forms of sports betting are controlled by sports books, which dictate the odds and numbers involved in each sports contest. Today, the most popular sports books are BetMGM, FanDuel, and DraftKings. Each of these bookmakers have one thing in common: they are all online. With the majority of these sports books now online, bettors can place their bets from virtually anywhere at any time. This increase in the availability of sportsbooks has made gambling much easier for bettors, which is one of the main reasons why it has exploded over the last 3 years. While betting through sportsbooks is the most popular way of sports gambling, it isn't usually how people first get into sports betting.
My name's Dan. I'm 18 years old.
Dan is a college student at St. John's University. He was first introduced to sports gambling in a way very common among people his age.
I first started gambling 2 years ago, and I started with FanDuel, pretty much, with fantasy, whatever, yeah.
While fantasy sites such as FanDuel, DraftKings, and Sleeper are all relatively new, fantasy sports isn't a new concept.
Josh Frescott, 40 years old.
Josh Frescott has been an avid sports gambler for as long as he can remember. And when he first started gambling almost 30 years ago, it came in a very similar way.
I started sports gambling in junior high school. It was fantasy football with a buddy of mine, and it was only for I think $1 for the whole season, but it was in junior high school.
While the majority of people are introduced to sports gambling through fantasy sports, it isn't technically seen as a form of sports betting. According to federal law, fantasy sports is classified as a skill rather than actual gambling, despite the fact that money is often involved. The reason for this is because when you bet using a sports book, you are betting on the certain outcome of a game. However, in fantasy sports, you are building a team of players, which you compete with others to see who has the best team. But for people who actively play like Josh and Dan, it is clear that they are one in the same.
Fantasy sports are 100% sports gambling because you're putting in money and it's a risk or reward, so yeah.
Yes, I do consider fantasy sports to be sports gambling. Why? Well, because you're paying money, right, to gamble on a sport. And if you win money, and if you lose money. So that's pretty much the definition of gambling.
Clearly, the classification of fantasy sports and its prevalence today is a part of the sports gambling scene. However, it isn't the biggest outlet for sports bettors. For almost the last 3 decades, sports gambling was illegal in the United States due to the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, which is commonly referred to as PSAPA. This act, which was passed by Congress in 1992, banned states from legalizing any form of sports betting. As a result of this ban, many bettors use illegal sports books to place their bets. These bookmakers, which are usually referred to as bookies, would facilitate your bets similar to that of the legal sports books seen today.
So my experience with a bookie, so when I first got into fantasy football from a larger monetary standpoint, there was people in my league that had a bookie. So I started to ask them about, how they did it, set up an account, stuff like that. And they set me up with their local bookie. And I've been using him for roughly 15 years.
With bookies collecting money weekly, it was this early experience where Josh saw the issues with sports gambling firsthand.
When I first started with the bookie, I went on like a really hot streak. I won probably a couple $1,000s within the first couple of weeks of doing it. And then what happened was I then went on a really bad losing streak, and I lost probably 2-3 times that. And then, you have to collect. The problem with it is, once you start losing to the bookie, it was based on a weekly schedule. So from Monday to Sunday, you had to place all your bets. And then by Sunday, whatever the total loss or wins were, you got paid or had to pay up on Monday. And once the week goes on and you're in the negative by a lot, you keep wanting to put on more bets so you can get closer to even. And then when you're gambling just for the sake of trying to get money back, you end up losing quite a bit more. So
Josh's experience is common amongst those in sports betting. Even for those who consider themselves professional sports bettors, they only win at a 53 to 55% rate. So, the question remains, with the large financial loss being such a huge aspect of sports gambling, why do so many people gamble on sports? For most, it is the thrill of victory.
There's a rush that comes from a win, and it's kind of hard to explain. It's just, the thrill and the excitement of winning. Sometimes the money and what the denomination of money you could potentially win isn't really even an issue. It's the thrill, whether you're at a casino, or you're betting on sports. The thrill of that win or getting close to that win is something that you really can't. That adrenaline rush is something that you really can't recreate. So I think that's a big factor in it, I think.
That rush and excitement when gambling can actually all be explained through the impact that gambling has on our brain. When gambling, bettors stimulate the hormone dopamine, which controls how we experience pleasure. For many, the release of dopamine when gambling can be up to 10 times more than most other experiences, which is why over 2.5 million Americans suffer from addictions to gambling. With so much research done on this issue, it is clear why sports gambling was illegal for so long. So why did this change? Well, in 2018, the Supreme Court struck down the PSAPA, saying that it was unconstitutional because it forces states to comply with the federal government, which violates the principles of the Constitution. In the last 3 years following this ruling, states rapidly pushed the legislation to legalize sports betting. As of now, 30 states have already legalized it, with more to follow in the coming years. One of these states is New York, which is planning to legalize gambling through sportsbooks in 2022. For some, getting involved in the sportsbooks is a no-brainer.
I will 100% be betting on sportsbooks.
Yeah, I think I would. If it starts off in the new year, I think there's a lot of good and bad that come from that. But I definitely would start gambling again.
With sports betting becoming more and more popular by the day, it is important to understand the factors that have influenced this industry's boom thus far. While the thrill is absolutely a factor, a lot of the current focus is on sports gambling advertisements and its portrayal in media. Over the last year alone, popular sports betting companies have spent over $220 million in marketing, an 82% increase compared to 2020. However, these advertisements are often misleading and lack proper government regulation. Just take a look at this ad by DraftKings.
Hey, let's make this interesting. Throw down some money and you can get your first bet matched up to $500.
I'm gonna get greenbacks, just like that.
Abraham, you know I always keep it 100.
You'd do that for me?
No, but DraftKings would.
DraftKings, the U.S. sportsbook for the U.S. sports fan. Get a risk-free bet up to $500. So download the top-rated sportsbook app and make it rain.
In this advertisement, DraftKings was promoting risk-free betting, stating that if you bet up to $500, they will match your deposit. What they don't tell you is that they match your deposit with non-refundable site credit, meaning that you can't withdraw that free deposit until you bet it all. This ad, among most others for sports betting, is misleading, which is an obvious issue, and one that could affect millions of young Americans if not addressed.
The problem is you're getting to a lot of people who really shouldn't be gambling. And I think without the regulations of it being legal, anybody at any age with any financial background can gamble right now. So I figure if you're on NFL, which they're watching, if you're on TNT, if you're on ESPN and you're promoting these gambling sites and these kids don't have the money to do that, they could start up an account easy with the bookie or, with any of these sites really. So I think that promoting it without regulating it and checking ages or with some type of consent or something like that, I think that it is really a problem because it's everywhere. It's on every major sporting channel. So I do think that is an issue.
With advertising being such a driving force in the promotion of this increasingly massive industry, it seems as though sports gambling could be a major issue in the coming years. As journalist Rich Shapiro puts it, the legalization of sports gambling has set off a ticking time bomb. In some people's eyes, that bomb has already exploded.
I think it's already a major issue. It's not like a ticking time bomb, like they said, because so many people do it already. Mainly people watch football because of gambling, so yeah.
While many experts do agree that it could become a major issue in the future, some say that it is something that cannot be avoided.
Gambling has been going on since forever. I mean, I think if you make it illegal, the only other way you can combat it is make it illegal, which they've been doing already, and it doesn't work because people are just going to do it illegally, and then you're bringing in, other types of mechanisms for people to get that. So whether it's, the mafia was doing it forever, you know what I mean? People are gonna do what they want to do. I think that you have to find ways though of treating people that maybe have issues with gambling or any other way of really just trying to find ways to help people that have problems. But I think that by a ticking time bomb, I wouldn't say it's a ticking time bomb because people have been doing it forever. And if you make it illegal, anything that's illegal, people are going to find ways to do it anyway, and it just makes it more dangerous. Yeah.
In the end, sports gambling isn't going away anytime soon. While there are numerous perspectives regarding its impact on society and the problems that come with it, one thing that most can agree on is the need for reform in the industry. Whether it is increasing regulation in advertising or in sportsbooks or any other change, it is clear that the major issues could emerge if changes aren't made. So for now, gamble on, America, but please, do so responsibly.